Product marketing is, without a doubt, one of the most misunderstood roles in any company. And that misunderstanding starts with a single fundamental error. We think it's about creating a message. It's not. It's about translation.
Right here, this is where so many leaders get it wrong. They bring in a product marketer and say, go find our story. But here's the thing, the story should need to be found. That's the first and honestly the most critical mistake.
The whole reason product marketing even exists is because a truth has already been established out there, in the market. It doesn't need to be invented. If your team is busy inventing meaning, it's a signal that something further upstream has already broken. And that's the kind of breakdown most companies don't even see happening.
Okay, so to really get this role right, we have to start by defining the raw material that product marketing actually works with. And that material is what we call go-to-market truth.
So after your go-to-market engine has been running for a while, after it's found its rhythm, truth stops being a hypothesis you wrote on a slide. It becomes an observable, measurable reality.
And this is where that truth becomes tangible, right? It's not someone's opinion from a brainstorming session. It's a set of real-world constraints that market behavior reveals. You can literally see it in who actually pays for your product. You see it in the friction points where people consistently drop out of your funnel. And you see it in the non-negotiables, the things they absolutely refuse to trade off. This isn't a story, it's data.
And this gets at the proper order of operations. It's the go-to-market functions, sales, product, demand gen. They're the ones who discover this truth, usually through a lot of costly trial and error. The job of product marketing begins after that truth has been established. It inherits the facts.
So that brings us to the real heart of the argument. We have to draw a very clear line between the act of messaging and the discipline of translation, because they are not the same thing at all.
Look, on one hand, you have messaging. It's all about optimizing expression. It adds surface area, more words, more creative angles, and we treat it like a creativity problem. But translation, that's a totally different discipline. It's focused on preserving meaning, especially when it's under pressure. Its entire goal is to reduce variance, to make sure the core truth gets transmitted with the highest fidelity possible. Product marketing is a translation problem.
We actually have a name for this, lossless translation. Think of it just like compressing a digital file. The whole point is to make the GTM truth smaller, more portable, easier to send across the entire organization. But you have to do it without losing any of the essential information. It's an act of precision, not invention. So what happens when this model gets violated? Well, this is where the entire function just breaks down. And it almost always happens when translation gets replaced with interpretation.
Just look at the difference here. Translation, like we said, assumes the meaning is already settled. It works within the constraints that it inherited. Interpretation does the exact opposite. It assumes the meaning isn't settled, and so it tries to fill in what it thinks are gaps. And that's the moment when bias, ambiguity, and just pure invention start to creep in and pollute the entire signal. This right here should be a massive red flag for any founder or leader. When the GTM truth is fuzzy, when the strategy hasn't converged, the burden is so often and so incorrectly put on product marketing to figure it out. And when they're forced to interpret, they have no choice but to start inventing language. They create jargon, they come up with clever phrases, all to paper over the strategic ambiguity. This isn't a solution, it's a symptom of a much, much deeper problem.
And this leads to a really powerful realization. The output of product marketing isn't just a bunch of assets. It's actually a high-fidelity diagnostic signal for the health of your entire go-to-market system.
You've probably seen this before, right? A team is constantly refreshing its messaging deck, and they frame it as being agile or iterating. But if you look at it from a systems perspective, this is a clear signal of deep instability. This constant churn, this semantic drift, it isn't refinement. It's a direct signal that the underlying GTM truth hasn't actually converged yet. The target is still moving around, so of course the language you're using to describe it has to keep changing too.
So the role of product marketing isn't to stabilize this chaos by inventing a story that just happens to stick for a quarter. Its real role is to be a perfect mirror. The team's thrashing, their instability, that exposes the lack of a stable GTM truth. They are a sensor, not a shock absorber.
So let's wrap this up by codifying it into a new mandate. If you're a founder, if you're a marketing leader, these are the new rules of engagement for your product marketing function.
On one side, here's what your product marketing team is allowed to do. They have your permission to take the established GTM truth and compress it. They are mandated to reduce entropy, all that randomness and variance, in how your company talks. Their job is to make the core meaning portable and scalable. Now, on the other side, what they must never do is invent meaning from scratch. They must never be asked to compensate for strategic ambiguity. And most importantly, they must never ever be used to stabilize a fiction, to go out and create a story that isn't actually true in the market yet.
Reframing the role like this is the critical first step, but it immediately brings up the next logical question, which is an operational one. Where exactly does the work of product marketing begin and end? So, in our next explainer, we're going to draw that boundary with precision, defining what the function touches and what it absolutely must not.